excretion is the elimination of substances, often waste, from the body. Not always, because for example, water, when you sweat, is not a waste product. It's something that's actually helping you to try and stay cool when you're hot. So often waste, but not always. Excretion occurs in every cell in your body. Respiratory system, you're excreting carbon dioxide. Are you guys okay? What's going on? I see a lot of flip. Oh, you okay? Okay. I just want to make sure everyone's okay. Yeah. Any issues? No. Okay. All right, just making sure. Thanks. Okay, so respiratory system, carbon dioxide is a waste product of that. In the digestive system, feces, the undigested material in your body, is a waste product. Urinary system is urine, but also we're going to take a look at the kidney and all the things that it does to make urine. So it's very, very amazing and complex. Excess water, if you drink too much water, you're going to get rid of that. Certain kinds of vitamins, if you've ever noticed, like C vitamin usually a C vitamin is like 2,000% of the amount that you need in a day. And so what are you gonna do with, once you hit that 100% of what you need, the rest of it you're going to pee out. And so when you take a vitamin, oftentimes your urine is really bright yellow because you're getting rid of all of those extra minerals and vitamins that go above and beyond what you need at that time. And some drugs are also excreted from your body. So other functions, the major function, well, actually the major functions are to regulate the amount of water in your blood, making sure that you are not dehydrated is a really important factor in your urinary system. Regulating your blood ions and nutrients inside of your blood so that your body can adjust. Important things like sodium and potassium, chloride, calcium. These are important in your muscles. And again, we don't just have muscles here. You've got muscles that assist almost every tissue and organ in your body. Glucose regulation. It's not just a pancreas issue, but it is a kidney issue, amino acids. Other function, make sure you're at the proper pH. We have, one of the factors in your kidneys is to maintain homeostasis of a lot of minerals, vitamins, ions, so that we're not too acidic or too basic in your body. Hormone secretion, so a huge relationship with the endocrine system, the chemical messaging system of your body. So those are the main jobs. So let's talk about a couple of simpler organisms that have simple excretory systems. So like flatworms, for example. Here's a flatworm. Planaria is a flatworm. So they have a really funky excretory system. They use what are called protonephridia. It regulates the water balance inside of their bodies. It's a branching network throughout their body. So you can see the green tubes that end at the blue bulbs, but it goes across their whole body. So instead of having a centralized location for all of those functions that we just mentioned of the excretory system, it's spread out across their very flat body. The branches end, as I said, at these blue areas. These are bulbs called flame cells. Inside of the flame cells, you see these little hairs. They're called cilia. And the cilia, remember that this is water environment inside of a body, right? The majority of organisms are water. And so they are beating this water, trying to push the water through the tube system with the cilia. The cilia produce a current. It pushes the water, the nutrients, the waste products around in that area. And then eventually, at these dark areas here, There are also excretory pores, where they excrete waste products. So they excrete waste products across the surface of their body. So imagine that you're sitting here and urine is just coming out your pores. Yeah, simple. And then a lot of times we look at it like, ew, that's gross. But because they are so flat, one centralized location for excretion is not, it doesn't work for their function, or their form, I should say. All right, let's talk about insects. Insects have a little bit different way of excreting. Insects in general, their body cavity, it's a hemocoel. They don't have a circulatory system like us, but all of the organs in their main cavity are bathed directly in blood. So that hemo is indicative of blood, and seal is a cavity. And so around all of their organs, blood is just touching all of their organs. Whereas us, we have tubes, right? You don't have just blood hanging out in your body freely. It's all in distinct tubes. So very different than what we have. The excretory system, it's called Malpighian tubules. It's extensions off of the intestines. It ends into the hemocoel. So it can absorb waste products, extra salt. Salt is going to be really important because they don't want to get dehydrated. And then those waste products are going to, from the blood, be absorbed and then be put into the digestive system. So here we have a merging of the excretory system of the urinary system with the excretory system of the digestive system. We have two separate systems for that. So this bright green are the Malpighian tubules. They've got a number of those tubules throughout the hemocoel. So again, all of this around the organs that you do see, there's more organs than this, but just showing the two main excretory systems here is that they will absorb salt and waste products and then bring it into the digestive system. What this does is it produces way more concentrated urine that's excreted with the feces. So when they quote unquote poop, they're releasing both feces and urine together. Earthworms. Earthworms are a little bit closer to us and then not really, because they have these more kidney-like structures, but earthworms have two of these kidney-like structures called nephridia in each segment of their body. Segmented animals are fascinating in that in each segment they have repetition of what's inside the segments. So across the whole body of the earthworm, they've got tons of nephridia, two in each segment. Earthworms are real squishy, so they do have a seal. This is C-O-E-L is like seal, as in a seal. They have a coelom, so instead of a hemocoel, they have a coelom. It's not called a hemocoel. Hemo meaning blood cavity. This is a water cavity. So their coelom is water filled. That's why they're very squishy. That's why you see a lot of times earthworms on a rainy day, maybe like last week, you see earthworms out on the sidewalks. And they leave the sidewalk so they don't drown in the grass. When the grass has too much water, they could drown. So they go out to a drier area like the sidewalk, but then when the rain stops, they can't slither their way back to the grass, and then they dehydrate really quickly because the majority of their body is water. So this will be diffused out. Waste, nutrients, everything that they don't need is going to collect, actually I should say, everything they need and don't need is going to collect in here. So this whole system, we're going to see inside of our kidneys, we have similar systems that repeat over and over again, like nephridia. And here, their system starts with the nephrostome. The nephrostome, this bulbous area, and again, you can see little hairs, going to beat, are going to try and grab up waste products and nutrients that are not needed. However, the nephrostome might grab onto things like glucose that they do need, and maybe some small biomolecules that they do need. And that's what happens in our kidneys as well, is that we do grab up some things we do need, and then you have this long series of tubes, so the stuff that you don't need can go out, and the stuff you do need can be put back in to your body. So the cilia on the nephrostome are trying to grab up the things they don't need. They bring it to a bladder-like area, right? Looks kind of like a bladder. If you remember, the pig bladder was long and skinny like that. Didn't have a curve. Anything that's not needed is excreted out in excretory pore. Again, 2 on every segment. So just like the flatworm, they're peeing all over their body. Weird. More complex animals have kidneys, and so we're going to take a look at our very complex excretory system, the urinary system. So if you remember the kidneys, we're on the back side of the body, very, very buried into the back walls of the body. So your kidneys are about down here. It can be very painful and dangerous if you get into a car accident and this is struck, get in some kind of accident, someone punches someone, something happens here. Not only can it just like damage the muscles, but you have the chance of damaging the kidney back there. So just to go over, remember kidneys, remember that this is the dorsal aorta in red that splits into the iliac arteries down into the legs. The kidneys are going to lead to the ureters or ureters, however you want to say it. And then because you have one on each side, you're going to have a ureter on each side, and they're both going to empty into the urinary bladder and out the urethra of the body. So let's talk about the function of this system. Is water, nutrients, go back into the blood, things that you need, water, right? We don't want to just constantly be losing water. So like what we saw with the circulatory system and its opposing system, the lymphatic system, we have a lot of checkpoints in our body, within our systems, to make sure that water isn't lost, that we bring water back in, because water is very important. If you remember from like Bio 111, that you talked about the importance of water in biochemical reactions. And so we need water to make and break our molecules, so really important. Toxic substances are released, cellular waste, extra vitamins, salt. If you too much salt, again, bad thing. We need a little bit of salt, but too much is bad. Hormones that are no longer needed, and any extra water. So we do want to absorb water, but then sometimes too much water can be distracting. It can be a factor that doesn't efficiently make your chemical reactions work well. So all these things can often be found in your urine. So urea. Urea is a factor inside of your urine. When you do urinalysis next week, this is one of the things that you're going to look for. Proteins are large biomolecules. The basic building blocks of proteins are chains of amino acids. So proteins, a large biomolecule group, will get broken down to its monomer or single molecule group, the amino acids. Then amino acids get broken down. When an amino acid gets broken down, one of the things that comes off of the amino acid is NH2. If we got into the complexity of covalent bonds and making sure that there's enough bonds and not openings on the orbitals and things like that, what would happen to this NH2 is that easiest thing to branch on to a missing bonding place is going to be another hydrogen. which makes it NH3, which is ammonia. Ammonia is very toxic. If you've ever cleaned with ammonia, one of the things that might happen is as you're pouring it, you might feel a little like sting of your eyes, because it's very, very dangerous to work with. It's very harsh on biomolecules. So that is in our body when we break down our proteins. Good thing about ammonia, it's water soluble, so it can be absorbed into water, which can be absorbed into your circulatory system, which is mostly water, and then it can be brought elsewhere in your body so that it can be neutralized. The liver, one of the many jobs of the liver, is to break down that ammonia into urea. So remember, the liver also produces bile for the breakdown of fats. It goes into the gallbladder. That bile becomes concentrated, goes into your small intestine. So here's another important job of the liver. Urea is far less toxic. It's also water soluble. So once the liver neutralizes the ammonia into urea, goes back into the bloodstream, it's carried to the kidneys, and then it's released in the urine. So here's just a little graphic of that. You eat protein. When your amino acids, when your proteins, a complex carbohydrate is broken down to its monomers, the amino acids, you see this NH2 group that is found on every amino acid. That is going to be metabolized off. It's going to add on a hydrogen, become NH3 or ammonia. This is water soluble. So in your digestive system, it is going to travel through the blood. It's going to be brought to the liver. The liver is going to neutralize it by making it urea. That is going to be water soluble, travel through the bloodstream to the kidneys, and the kidneys are going to release it into the urine. So simple pathway of the excretory system, we're talking about the urinary system specifically here, is that the kidneys produce our urine. So remember, you have a kidney on each side. The kidneys are going to release products from there into the ureters or ureters. A ureter on each side going to meet up and empty into the urinary bladder. Then the urinary bladder is going to be released out the urethra. So interesting, I tried to find a picture of a female urinary system, and it's very difficult to find because a lot of the systems are, again, revolve around males. So with females, we have a little bit different in terms of this would go out the penis, and we'll see a little bit more about this when we get into the reproductive systems, that ours would be just a little bit different than the males. Inside of the kidney, you have many systems like what you saw with the earthworms. So we have a lot of similarities there. And these are called nephrons. Each nephron is a filter that is connected to a blood vessel. Or I should say not just one blood vessel, it's too many. So within, there's a lot going on within your kidneys. Kidneys are so cool and complex. Okay, so let's take a look at this nephron. You have millions of these within each kidney. This whole system is a nephron. You have millions of them. So it should tell you that filtration of our blood is really, really important. So the first step is to just get everything into the nephron. So at this point, Bowman's capsule, what it does is it pretty much grabs everything out of the blood that it can. The second step is the formation of urine. So here's step one, is filtration. Everything pretty much comes out into the Bowman's capsule. So from the blood, everything comes out Step 2 is tubular reabsorption. Very important things are going to immediately go back into the blood. So things like glucose. So if a lot of important things are grabbed out that are smaller molecules like glucose and water are going to be put right back into the blood. So that's why you see the wrapping of this blood vessel all the way around the nephron. Because throughout this system, things that the blood or the body wants back are going to be put back into the blood. The third step is tubular secretion. Here, what's going to happen is that other things that are important that are still in the blood, like waste products, like medicines that you don't need, are going to go from the blood back into the nephron, and then pretty much this is going to collect it and send it out. So urine is concentrated, but it is controlled. So you might notice someday your urine is just pretty clear, and then another day it's really, really bright yellow, and then another day you might notice it's really, really dark yellow. And so that just depends on what you're doing in your life. And so to concentrate what you have, when it's dark yellow, should give you an indication that you have a lot of stuff in your urine and not a lot of water. When your urine is really like more clear and light yellow, should say that you have been drinking more than adequate amount of water and everything is diluted more that you don't need in your urine. So we have this whole system to do it. So the loop of Henle, the long tube part of your nephron, it is only found in birds and mammals. And one of the things that we can look at is that if you have an animal who has a really long loop of Henle, it should suggest that they want to get as much water back into their body as possible, and that they probably live in a really dry environment. Shorter loops of Henle might be found in animals that live closer to water sources, where it's a lot easier to get water. The loop of Henle, the job is water absorption, the main job, I should say. There's many jobs of it, but main job, get water back into the body, back into the blood. So this diagram, this shows you the whole nephron and what's coming and going at different points. This is a really nice diagram to go on an exam, and from looking at it, you would answer questions about it. So you don't need to memorize, like this would be, you know, if you go on to take an anatomy class or a physiology class, your professor might say, you need to memorize this. What I'm going to tell you is just understand what's happening. So important things that right here at the beginning, so if I put like a number 1, or so, oh, there is a number 1. So number 1, number 2. So if I said at number 2, what is getting reabsorbed into the blood? So the arrows going up are going back into the blood. So your answer would be sodium and nutrients, water, and then these other ions here. At step 2, what's going back into the nephron? Hydrogen ions and some drugs are going back in. At step 3, what is majorly going back into the blood? What's going into the blood? Good, water, right? So at step 3, if I said what's happening at step 3, you have the absorption of water into the nephron, the absorption of water into the blood. Absorption of water into the blood. At step 4, what is majorly coming out of the nephron back into the blood? Right, NaCl, or salt. At the distal tubule, what's coming back into the nephron? Right. So you have hydrogen ions, potassium ions, and some drugs are going back into the nephron from the blood. The things that are going out of the nephron are salt, calcium ions, HCCO3, and H2O. Those are going back into the blood. Step 8. What are 2 things that are leaving the nephron and going back into the blood? Good. Urea and water. Excellent. Okay, so that's basically, I just want you to be able to, if I put this on here and I ask questions about it, make sure that you can read it. If you have any questions about that, let me know. But that's the nephron. It's pretty complex. Okay, have you ever noticed that sometimes you wake up and you just have to, like, you drink something and then you have to pee more and more and more, and probably you think, like, I think I'm peeing more than I'm taking in. Well, some things that you might consume are diuretics. Coffee, tea that has a lot of caffeine, energy drinks, certain drugs might cause you to lose more water than you're consuming. Your nephrons are going to notice this. Your kidneys are going to keep track of this because they don't want you to be over dehydrated. So you have a regulator. It's called the Antidiuretic Hormone, ADH. You can think of it as like anti-urine flow. It's going to try and slow down the amount of water going into your urine. But it's a process that might take a little bit to catch up to. So ADH is going to increase the permeability of that last tube, that long horizontal tube. That's the distal tubule. It's going to say, hey, you, get more water. Oh, sorry, the collecting duct is the horizontal tube, and also the distal tubule. So these 2 things, it's going to say, hey, more water. I know you're already absorbing water, but do a little bit more. So then more water can be put from the urine into the blood and not peed out. So it's going to slow down that process. This is going to help to regulate your blood volume. It's also going to help to kind of say to some of your osmotic concentration receptors, like, hey, we need more water. Okay, so let's say that just you haven't drank a lot of fluids in the morning, you go outside, it's really hot, you've got to do a bunch of running around, and you start to sweat more. So what that does is that initially you're starting to lose water, right? Maybe you're sweating it out. Maybe you're peeing out a little bit extra. And so your osmotic concentration rises, which means that you just have less water in your blood. The volume of water in your blood is going to go down. When that happens, is that receptors in your brain are getting a notification that says, hey, let me release something to tell those kidneys, let me release ADH to tell the kidneys. ADH is going to travel through the blood, it's going to contact the kidneys, and it's going to tell the kidneys, increase the permeability of the distal tubule and the collecting duct, so that now you're going to have more concentrated urine, which means that it's more yellow. It's going to have more stuff in it rather than water. So one of the things that happens is when you're dehydrated, you might see that your urine is really dark yellow. And if you haven't taken like a multivitamin, you know that it should not be dark yellow. It should be more clear. A lot of athletes will be told by their coaches, look at your urine. Because if you look at your urine and it's really yellow, it means you need to drink more water. A lot of times too, for diabetics, for example, they might be told, look at their urine. All right, why don't we stop there? I know we're a little over. I'm cashing in on last week a little bit, sorry. All right, so study day. I suggest, you certainly are adults and can do what you want. I suggest you pull out your pigs and study. I'm certainly going to be able to help you if you have any questions. Study the torso models and the heart models. Whoever goes down first, if you can grab the key, please, while I clean up here. I appreciate it.